Marcus Hayes, a decorated Black Army veteran, was humiliated when police officers suddenly dragged him from his own courtroom during a routine hearing. The officers' rigid enforcement, blind to his service and dignity, left the entire room in shock and disbelief. But Marcus revealed his judicial authority at the perfect moment, turning the humiliation into a powerful assertion of respect and truth. Just wait until you see how the courtroom erupted in awe, and how justice fully reclaimed its place in this unforgettable story. The courtroom was unusually crowded that morning, the air heavy with anticipation. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long beams across polished wooden benches, and the low murmur of conversations filled the space like a restless tide. People leaned forward, some clutching folders, others tapping pens nervously against their notebooks. But beneath all the ordinary courtroom tension, an undercurrent of unease threaded through the room. Something about the way Marcus Hayes carried himself seemed to draw the eyes of everyone present. Marcus, a decorated Black Army veteran, sat near the back of the gallery, his posture straight, shoulders squared, and hands folded calmly in his lap. At 58, his hair had silvered at the temples, and lines around his eyes told stories of both laughter and hardship. Yet there was a quiet strength in him, an aura of dignity earned through decades of service and sacrifice. He had faced far more daunting challenges overseas than this small property dispute. Still, today, the weight of waiting, the uncertainty of the court's judgment, made him restless. His gaze wandered across the room, scanning familiar faces. Neighbors involved in the dispute, lawyers shuffling papers, and the judge preparing notes at the bench. Nothing seemed out of place, until it all changed in an instant. The moment arrived without warning. Two uniformed police officers, stern-faced and moving with a brisk efficiency, entered the gallery. They did not hesitate. Within seconds, they had reached Marcus and, without explanation, took hold of his arms. The courtroom fell silent, a collective gasp hanging in the air. Marcus, startled, attempted to rise, his voice barely above a whisper as he asked, What is this about?" But the officers did not respond. Their grip was firm but careful, as though they were trained for control rather than confrontation, yet the action itself was jarring and entirely unprovoked. Whispers rippled through the gallery like a wave breaking against the shore. People leaned forward, eyes wide with disbelief, murmuring questions that went unanswered. "Why him?" one woman asked, her voice trembling. "He's a veteran. He fought for this country." The words seemed to echo in the cavernous room, bouncing off the high ceilings, but no one moved to stop the unfolding scene. Lawyers froze mid-step, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern, then to something resembling horror. The judge, equally stunned, paused with pen in hand, eyebrows knit together as if struggling to comprehend what he was seeing. Marcus's calm composure faltered just slightly as he was guided toward the exit. Each step was a jarring reminder of the injustice in play. A veteran, someone who had devoted years of his life to protecting the nation, being treated like a disruptive visitor rather than a respected citizen. There was no explanation, no opportunity for dialogue, only the mechanical motion of being moved against his will. The tension in the room thickened, a tangible pressure pressing on the hearts of those who had come to witness justice. Rage simmered quietly among the onlookers. Some clenched their fists beneath their laps. Others exchanged glances heavy with disbelief. Even without speaking, the message was clear. This was wrong, and everyone could feel it. The officers, professional yet oblivious to the emotional weight of their actions, maintained their course. Marcus, however, did not resist violently. He was not the kind of man to escalate with anger. Still, the injustice cut deep, piercing the sense of fairness and moral order that every person in that room had come to expect from the courtroom. As they reached the halfway point toward the exit, the entire room seemed to hold its collective breath. The shock of the act, coupled with the quiet indignation on Marcus's face, created a mixture of tension and disbelief that settled over the room like a storm cloud. People's hearts raced in unison, a shared awareness of the gravity of what was happening. In those moments, anger was no longer just an individual response. It became a communal force, pressing against the confines of the courtroom walls, demanding recognition, demanding justice. And in the center of it all, Marcus Hayes remained steadfast, a figure of dignity under duress, embodying the outrage of everyone watching, his very presence igniting a fire in the hearts of those who refused to stand by silently. The injustice had arrived like a sudden, unwelcome thunderclap, and the world inside the courtroom would never be the same. Marcus Hayes felt the weight of every gaze in the courtroom pressing down on him as he was escorted toward the exit. The murmurs of shock had grown into an almost tangible hum of disbelief and unease. Each step he took seemed to echo through the polished floors, a harsh reminder of the humiliation being imposed on him. Marcus had served his country with honor, facing challenges most people could not imagine. Yet here he was, being treated as though his presence itself was a disruption. The sting of injustice was sharp, and for a moment it threatened to overwhelm him. His mind raced with a mixture of confusion and hurt. How could this happen? How could those sworn to uphold the law so casually dismiss the years of dedication and sacrifice he had poured into defending his country? The officers' faces were impassive, professional, and unwavering, yet their actions cut deeper than any words could. Marcus's chest tightened with a sense of helplessness, a gnawing feeling that the very system designed to protect him seemed blind to the truth of who he was. Seated in the front row, Lily, his 17-year-old granddaughter, was holding back sobs that threatened to spill over. Her small frame shook as she watched the man she had idolized since childhood, her mentor, her hero, her grandfather, be treated so callously. Her hands clutched her notebook like a lifeline, but it did little to comfort her. She had always believed in the fairness of the law, in the dignity of service. Yet now those beliefs seemed fragile, as though they could shatter at any moment. Her wide, tear-filled eyes followed every movement, her heart aching with helplessness. She could not comprehend how someone who had given so much could be treated so unfairly. With each step Marcus was forced to take, the humiliation grew heavier. It was not just the physical act of being moved, it was the stripping away of his dignity, the quiet message that his achievements and sacrifices could be dismissed in an instant. He felt a pang of bitterness, a mix of sadness and anger that pressed down on his shoulders. Yet even in that darkness, there was something deeper stirring inside him, a spark of resolve that refused to be extinguished. Marcus reflected on the years he had spent serving others, protecting strangers in faraway lands, and supporting his community when he returned home. He had faced fear, danger, and adversity with courage, and now, as he faced the indignity of this courtroom, he realized that this, too, could be met with strength. His anger was not aimless. It was focused, a quiet determination that whispered to him that he would not allow this moment to define him. This pain, as sharp and consuming as it was, would be the foundation for his next move. He inhaled slowly, feeling the rise and fall of his chest, grounding himself in the present moment. Marcus refused to let the humiliation break him. Instead, he allowed it to sharpen his awareness, to crystallize a plan that would transform this injustice into an opportunity to reclaim his dignity. The officers continued to lead him through the courtroom, oblivious to the storm of emotion swirling around him. But Marcus's mind was clear. Every stare, every whisper, every flash of disbelief in the room only strengthened his resolve. As he approached the doorway, Marcus caught a glimpse of Lily, her hands trembling as she wiped her tears. Their eyes met briefly, and in that fleeting moment, a quiet understanding passed between them. She knew, as he knew, that this pain would not last forever. It would shape him, refine his resolve, and prepare him to respond in a way that none of them could have anticipated. In the heart of suffering, Marcus Hayes found a steady flame of determination, one that would guide his next steps and ensure that dignity and justice were not lost in the face of humiliation. In that moment, the courtroom's whispers and gasps became a backdrop to a deeper narrative unfolding, a story of endurance, strength, and the quiet but unyielding power of a man determined to rise above pain. Marcus Hayes, humiliated yet unbroken, carried with him not just his own resolve, but the hope and admiration of everyone who recognized that true strength could shine even in the darkest moments. As Marcus Hayes was guided toward the courtroom exit, a moment of quiet clarity settled over him. The murmurs and stares of the spectators seemed to fade into the background, replaced by a singular focus in his mind. Each step he had taken under duress had strengthened a resolve that was no longer tentative. He realized, in that precise instant, that the situation, as unjust and humiliating as it had seemed, was not the final word. There was an opportunity, an opening for truth to shine through, for dignity to be restored, and Marcus knew exactly how to seize it. Without warning, he stopped. The officers holding his arms looked down, uncertain, as Marcus planted his feet firmly on the polished floor. He straightened his back, lifting his chin, and turned slowly to face the courtroom. There was no anger in his eyes, no trace of panic or defeat. Instead, there was authority, a quiet, unwavering command that radiated from every line of his posture. The entire room seemed to pause, as though sensing the shift in energy. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, their collective breath held, waiting to see what would unfold next. "I am a judge here today," Marcus said, his voice clear and resonant, carrying effortlessly across the room. In one smooth motion, he opened his coat and revealed the judicial badge tucked neatly inside. The effect was instantaneous. Gasps erupted from the crowd, reverberating off the high walls. People pressed together, eyes wide with disbelief, whispers of astonishment spreading through the gallery like wildfire. The officers froze mid-step, suddenly aware of the enormity of their mistake. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed suspended. The murmurs grew louder, shifting from shock to recognition, then to admiration. Lawyers who had been engrossed in their notes looked up, eyebrows raised in surprise. Even the other officers in the room straightened, some instinctively stepping back, others quickly regaining composure as they acknowledged the authority of the man they had nearly removed. The courtroom, which had moments ago been a stage for injustice, now pulsed with a renewed respect for law and order, and for Marcus Hayes himself. He did not raise his voice further, did not scold or demand apologies. That was unnecessary. The room had already understood. The truth, plain and undeniable, was sufficient to command attention and reverence. Marcus walked slowly, deliberately, back toward the bench, each step measured and composed. With every movement, he projected calm control, a silent assertion that justice and dignity could not be overturned by haste or assumption. His presence alone was enough to restore equilibrium to the room. Spectators watched in awe as he resumed his seat, placing his hands on the polished wood of the bench. A quiet energy flowed through the gallery, no longer tension, no longer fear, but hope. The humiliation that had clouded the room only minutes before was replaced by the realization that truth and authority could not be denied. Lily, sitting in the front row, breathed out a long, shaky sigh, relief washing over her as tears of admiration glistened in her eyes. Her grandfather, the man she had always looked up to, had turned a moment of deep injustice into a display of strength and integrity that left everyone present inspired. The officers, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, exchanged embarrassed glances, but maintained a respectful distance. Their earlier actions had been misdirected, but the correction was immediate, clear, and undeniable. Marcus's calm authority had reshaped the room's energy, transforming confusion and indignation into a collective understanding that right had been restored, not through confrontation, but through quiet, undeniable truth. In that instant, the courtroom itself seemed to shift. the atmosphere lighter, yet charged with newfound respect. Marcus's composure radiated beyond the bench, touching everyone present. His strength was not only in his words or his badge, but in the steady courage he had displayed in the face of humiliation. Through his actions, he had demonstrated that dignity, truth, and authority were inseparable, and that hope could emerge even in moments that seemed darkest. The seeds of admiration and inspiration were planted firmly in every heart that had witnessed the scene, a reminder that integrity and courage could change the course of events in ways nothing else could. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath for a single suspended moment, and then the energy shifted. Outrage, confusion, and disbelief gave way to something far stronger: awe. Spectators rose from their seats almost simultaneously, compelled by the undeniable presence of Marcus Hayes. Some brought their hands to their hearts, saluting the man who had served his country and now stood firm in the face of injustice. Others clapped, softly at first, then more boldly as the realization of what had just transpired sank in. Tears glistened on the cheeks of those who had been moved, their expressions a mixture of relief, admiration, and gratitude. The atmosphere, once heavy with tension, now pulsed with a sense of shared respect and wonder. The officers, previously confident and resolute, froze again, this time in recognition of the consequences of their actions. Their earlier misstep was now plain to everyone. They exchanged uneasy glances, a mixture of embarrassment and remorse coloring their features. It was clear that their behavior had been scrutinized not only by the law, but by every witness in the room. Slowly, they stepped back, allowing the space around Marcus to assert itself fully, a silent acknowledgment that the moment had shifted entirely in his favor. The balance of authority, previously disrupted, had been restored. Marcus resumed his seat at the bench with the same calm composure he had displayed moments before. He did not demand apologies, nor did he make any overt display of triumph. There was no need. The room had already recognized his authority, his integrity, and his courage. Order returned naturally, not because it had been imposed, but because it was deserved. The whispering ceased, replaced by an almost reverent quiet, a collective understanding that justice had been quietly but undeniably restored. From the front row, Lily leapt forward, her arms wrapping tightly around her grandfather. She pressed her face to his chest, the warmth and strength of his presence grounding her in relief and pride. "I knew you could do it, Grandpa," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Marcus hugged her back, holding her close, a silent affirmation that no moment of humiliation, no act of injustice, could ever diminish the strength of their bond or the values he had lived by. In that embrace, hope and resilience converged, leaving an imprint not only on Lily, but on everyone watching. The story of Marcus Hayes, the black veteran who had been dragged from the courtroom, had been rewritten in the span of a few powerful seconds. What began as an act of injustice had transformed into a testament of courage, integrity, and the enduring power of dignity. Spectators left the gallery with their hearts stirred, carrying with them a renewed understanding of what it means to stand for truth, to uphold justice, and to command respect through composure and moral clarity. The image of Marcus, standing tall against misunderstanding and indignity, would linger in their minds, a symbol of perseverance and honor. Even outside the courtroom, the ripples of that moment extended further. News of the incident spread quickly, capturing the imagination of the community and inspiring conversations about respect, service, and accountability. Marcus's quiet authority and measured response became a model for handling adversity, not through aggression or confrontation, but through steadfast dignity and unwavering integrity. People discussed the courage required to remain calm under scrutiny, the strength in standing up for oneself when the world seems intent on diminishing your worth. In that room, everyone had witnessed something rare, the power of principle in action. Marcus Hayes had turned humiliation into a lesson in courage and injustice into a demonstration of human resilience. The courthouse, once filled with whispers of shock and anger, now buzzed with admiration and inspiration. The legacy of that day would endure, not just as the story of a veteran who was nearly wronged, but as a story of triumph over adversity, of dignity reclaimed, and of the quiet yet extraordinary ways that integrity can transform the world around us.